My name is Kim Howard, and if I haven't met you, I am with the Southwest Indiana Small Business Development Center, and I want to welcome you today to the first in a series of conversations that we're having about turning adversity into opportunity. I'm really excited today to kick this off. It's actually our first panel presentation that we're doing in a series. We're working closely with the Southwest Indiana Chamber and the Mayor's Task Force to reopen Evansville. And along with having some challenging couple of months, I have been reminded by the depth and generosity and capability that we have in our community, in working with people that have volunteered their time, that have really stepped up to everything that's going on right now. I'm going to start with our own SBDC team that has really worked tirelessly to make sure that we have our attention turned toward all the small businesses that need our assistance right now. Also, we've got some great volunteers in our community that have helped to guide us and help us think through questions that we need to be asking to make sure that we've got quality depth programming for everybody that needs it right now. I will also thank Kathy Kleindorfer, who many of you know because she's very active in our Family Business Alliance, has volunteered countless hours, and has really helped to think through the strategy as we put together some of this programming. Quick housekeeping. If everybody would put themselves on mute, we'd really appreciate it. Everybody but the panel members. If you have questions, there's a chat button at the bottom. I'm sure most of you have been on enough Zoom meetings. You know where that chat button is, but go ahead and put your question on chat and we'll get it to Kathy. And if we have some time at the end of the panel, we'll get to your questions. We'll also ask you at the end of this presentation if you'd like to be on our mailing list, you'd like to hear more about the panel presentations we're going to be doing, as well as some focused learning groups that will be facilitated on topics that we think are, again, important, that you've told us are important. So Kathy, thank you. And our great panel members, Brad Niemeier, Drew Peyronnin, Trudy Stock, and Tracy Zeller. So Kathy, I'll kick it over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Kim. And again, welcome everyone. Just to reiterate, our purpose is to help businesses, particularly small businesses, recover from the pandemic, primarily by providing information and opportunities to share ideas. Our panelists are all volunteering their time to share their wisdom this morning, and each will share some ideas from his or her experience throughout the pandemic. Our hope is that each person listening will walk away with some ideas that might help you as you address some of the challenges moving forward. As Kim knows, so send your questions in through chat. The questions that we don't get to, we will attempt to answer by email later this week. So we'll try to get to all of your questions. So we're going to get started with introductions, and I'm going to have the panel introduce themselves by sharing their name, of course, a little bit about the business, and then one thing they've learned through this pandemic. So Brad, let me have you kick off.
All right, I am Brad Niemeier. I'm the founder of Azzip Pizza. Azzip Pizza is a growing fast casual pizza restaurant, started in Evansville in 2014. And we're getting ready to open our 10th location in Greenwood, just south of Indy. So that'll be our first expansion into the Indianapolis market. That's currently on hold right now. So the one thing I think I learned so far from the pandemic is just overall to kind of expect the unexpected. Obviously, you can't plan for a pandemic all the time, but being ready, stay on your toes, ready to adapt. This is something we have to do all the time, but just being ready to adapt to whatever life throws at us.
Okay, great. Thank you. Tracy Zeller.
Yes, I'm Tracy Zeller with Tracy Zeller Jewelry. And I think being over-prepared for the unexpected. Moreover, be very flexible and willing to put in the hours that you did your first 5 years in business. Lots of times business owners get very comfortable and we don't spend as much time in and on our business that we did the first 5 years, but just be very willing to put in the hours that to restart and grow.
Okay, thank you. Drew?
Good morning. I'm Drew Peyronnin, and I'm a retired guy. And as I've reflected on my career path, I realized late in life that I'm also seriously ADD. So I've done a lot of different things. I've been involved in a lot of different businesses, some successful and many not so much so. But through that whole thing, I've gained a lot of experiences, and in my retirement, especially, I've been blessed to be able to do a lot of business mentoring currently through the Purdue Foundry at Westgate, which is a startup accelerator program offered by Purdue. I think what I've learned, or I guess what's been reaffirmed in the pandemic, is how resilient the American people are, and how special entrepreneurs are.
Okay, great, thank you. Trudy?
Hi, I'm Trudy Stock with Symanski Company. And I would say that the thing that I've learned is how much more quickly things can be implemented when there's an immediate necessity for it to happen. So the ability to move quickly when necessary can happen.
Yeah, great. So let's start by looking at the revenue side of the situation. So there are a few people who've been blessed with an increase in demand, like if you happen to be making PPE, but for the most part, people are experiencing a downturn in demand. So Brad, I'm going to start with you. Azzip was built around the idea that people would walk in and get a customized, personalized pizza, individual pizza, and then either sit in the restaurant or take it home. So when you were ordered to close, the potential was for your revenues to drop to absolutely zero. So tell us about the steps you took to rethink your business model in order to operate in this new brave world.
Yeah, that really changed quickly. So I think the biggest thing is we were kind of thinking ahead before all this happened about the future of dining in restaurants. And one of the aspects of that was online ordering. So we had been testing an online ordering system at one of our locations in Bloomington. Hadn't rolled that out everywhere or anywhere else yet, but it was in testing. And so we've been trying it for about 6 months, hadn't put a lot of emphasis or thought on it, but we had the system kind of developed and ready to go. And so that really helped us quickly adapt. Within about 2 days of the dining room being shut down, we had that rolled out everywhere, and we're able to accept online orders everywhere. And we were able to hang around that 50% or so down for the most part during this, and that's really allowed us to keep our full staff on. It's allowed us to keep paying our teams, keep paying our vendors, and trying to stay afloat the best we can. And so that's been huge. I think we've also been able to do a few kind of innovative things to try to drive customers into the store or to the online ordering during this time. And so a few of those things are before all this, we had a big presence in with our We Give a Zip program. So that's our give back arm of Azzip. And we wanted to continue that. We wanted to keep being Azzip through this. And we didn't want to completely give away all those things that we worked hard to do. And so we kind of reformulated that plan to be able to do the give backs through online ordering. We kind of extended the period of time over, instead of 1 day where your organization was, having a give back, we extended it over a whole week. That helped spread out the demand and didn't make this huge rush for the teams for certain organizations. And that really helped. That drove about the 10% increase doing that. We were also able to introduce a new menu item. We call it Zip Dip. It's a jalapeno popper dip with pizza chips. And so that's another thing that's really helped drive some sales and keep people interested in Azzip during this time.
Okay, great. Now that we're all hungry, Tracy, you said when you closed that you literally hit the reset button, after which you became laser focused on how to restart and rebuild. So what did you do to reset, rebuild, and plan for the future in the face of this pandemic?
Well, the first few days, obviously, there was such a helpless feeling about just being completely out of control because, the government is basically telling us to lock our doors. So, quickly pivoting to focus on what we did have control over. So I if you're one that likes to be in control, you have to think about, okay, what tasks can I get done? So we just started thinking about, basically our clients, because after 35 years in the industry, your clients do become your friends. We reached out to clients who had repairs and special orders in our vault, and we offered curbside pickup. Just kind of, you know, tried to think, well, if restaurants are doing it, why can't we? So we adapted to that. We sent clients uplifting cards just to try to make their day and keep us in their mind and let them know that we were thinking about them. We made a goal to call a number of clients every single day just to say, hey, just checking on you. Most of them, we know their kids, we know their parents, we know things that are going on in their lives. You know, how are the wedding plans coming along? What have you done to change that? Just letting them talk about what was going on in their life. The grassroots marketing really paid off because, you know, it led to private appointments as birthdays and anniversaries and planned engagements still stayed on the calendar. You know, guests, when we did the private appointments and started offering that, guests that like to come in for a private appointment, they're actually buyers, they're not shoppers. We were able to narrow down what it was they were looking for via, you know, text and emailing, photographs, that type of thing. So the private appointments was really key. I wish I had thought about that the first couple of weeks in business instead of in week 3 or 4. But, you know, it's easy to think about what we're doing now, but in those first couple of weeks, I think most business owners were just scrambling around trying to learn everything, all the information that was thrown out at us. The private appointments is something that we'll continue to do. It's been very, very successful. We shifted our business hours to opening at 10, when we reopened, opening at 10 in the morning and offering private appointments starting at 9. And most every day we have a private appointment at 9 o'clock. Just catering again to clients that feel more comfortable about coming in by themselves.
Great. Trudy, there are lots of financial aid programs designed to help businesses survive the pandemic. How can these be best leveraged, but also what mistakes should people avoid making as they look at these potential support systems?
So many companies applied for and received the SBA Paycheck Protection Program, also referred to as the PPP program. It's a loan with a forgivable component if it's used for payroll and certain other expenses during an 8-week period. This is a great opportunity for small businesses to use this additional cash to cover payroll, predominantly payroll, but again, other expenses. And I think the initial thought was to how can we maximize the forgiveness piece? And so that's clearly, I think, something to think about, but the better option might not be worried about maximizing forgiveness, but being strategic about your payroll cost. Remembering that any portion that's not forgiven is still stays on your books or can stay on your books as a loan at a 1% rate for 2 years. So it's really a good source of cash in kind of either event. So for example, if you have employees that you want to bring back, but if you can't do something that either creates value for them or your company, bringing them back just to enhance the forgiveness piece might not be the best strategy in how to manage that SBA PPP loan. And so being strategic about it and approaching it in a way that makes sense. And again, thinking about, are those employees going to either help grow the company or help grow themselves? And if not, maybe it's best to not bring them back quite yet. Another program that's available that I think has maybe not gotten as much attention, it's not available to companies who got the PPP loan, but it's available to others. And it's up to $5,000 credit per employee through the end of 2020 if certain criteria is met. And the criteria stems around times where your businesses were either partially or fully suspended, or if you've had a significant decrease in revenues. And so again, if you got the PPP, you're not eligible, but for those companies that chose to or did not get the PPP, should still evaluate that employee retention credit. There's also a payroll tax holiday, provides companies the option of deferring payment of Social Security taxes, and that can be deferred until the end of 2021 and the end of 2022. So you really can push off paying some of your Social Security taxes for a much later date. I think it can be a good strategy, but again, you want to plan from a cash flow perspective. You don't want to kind of out of sight, out of mind. We don't make those Social Security payments, and now, whoops, we have a big payment due in 2021, 2022 that we had not planned and strategized for. There are, and this was shared in a chamber meeting last week, there are a variety of local grant programs that are available as a resource to small businesses. So I would encourage companies to check out and learn what those are, because there's just a lot of good programs in place in our various communities. But kind of in summary around that, make sure that your decisions are driven by good business strategy versus trying to let it be focused on free money or tax incentive. First, look at what's going to be the best business decision and let the others kind of complement that, but not drive that decision.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And revenue is just one side of the business success equation. We also have to be thinking about expenses in order to at least break even or hopefully remain profitable. Drew, you work with lots of startups and often use the term, which I love, know your expiration date. What exactly does that mean, and why might it be even more important in these challenging times?
Well, there's power in simplicity, and we're in very complex times. And so if we can distill some things down to very simple terms, I think it benefits everyone and allows us to focus on what's most important. And I like metaphors too in complex situations. And so, oxygen is capital is the oxygen of the enterprise. So what's extremely important and what's very simple is to calculate your expiration date. And that can and should be done, at least I would say, on a monthly basis, but in these times, probably on a weekly basis. And the expiration date is simply your revenue minus your expenses relative to how much working capital you have available. And it's very simple because if you're extending your expiration date, you're in a pretty good position to optimize your business. But if your expiration date is shortening, it's call for urgency. And as to kind of follow through on the metaphor, I mean, I think you can think of your business as something that's living, and you can think of it as being exposed to COVID. So you've either got it or you're at risk of getting it. And assuming you've got it, you may be a little bit ill, or you may be critically ill. And if you're critically ill, number one, you've got to be sure you got a ventilator available and you've got a source of oxygen. Once that's cared for, then you can start thinking about your medical treatment and your discharge into perhaps physical occupational therapy. And then ultimately you can think about getting back to the gym and getting optimized in shape. And the same thing goes for business too.
Yeah, great, thank you. Brad, the pandemic has also increased some expenses or caused new expenses as people prepare for new requirements around safety, cleanliness. So what new expenses have you had due to the coronavirus, both in terms of supplies and how you allocate human resources?
Yeah, I think that was one of the things we thought about a lot is, okay, as we open back up, how do we look at labor just in general? And one of the things we talked about a lot is we don't want to make a mistake in safety. It's one thing to make a mistake in, causing a delay in somebody's pizza and have to wait a little while longer, or they get the wrong product. Like, we hate those mistakes and we don't want to make them, but those are more understandable from a customer perspective. But if we make a mistake in safety and don't do things like sanitize tables when people are getting up, or have the proper, sanitizer stations out, or do the right things in those regards, then that's not as forgivable of an offense. And we would, hate it if we made those mistakes. And so that's the thing we've looked at. And so we've kind of gone above and beyond and tried to go overboard in having plenty of staff to make sure they're on top of those things, especially when we're just first opening up, and making sure we learn how to do it right and do it well the first time, so that we're not making those mistakes in safety. And so we have an extra cleaning person that's on every rush. And so their whole job is to just keep the dining room sanitized, wipe down doorknobs, wipe down high touch areas, do all those things. We've also have quite a few one-time kind of expenses of putting up additional barriers and sneeze guards to keep, as much protection between customers and our teams as possible. And so those things are all up now. We kind of made a checklist of all these different things that we felt like we had to do open safely. And we weren't going to open a store if we didn't have all those boxes checked. And so going through and checking those off was something that we made sure to do before opening any dining rooms. We just opened dining rooms here in Evansville yesterday. And we opened a dining room in Terre Haute last week. And so we got about a week of practice trying to integrate an online order stream and an in-person order stream together. And that's kind of why we went that route. And so we've been learning a lot and doing our best to kind of integrate those two together.
So on your online ordering, Brad, do you continue to deliver outside to people in a car, or are they now coming in to pick up the pizza?
Yeah, that was another thing. It would be more efficient if customers came in to pick up their pizza inside, but we felt like to keep the amount of people inside the restaurant at the lowest possible amount, it was best for us to deliver out to the car. So that's what we've continued to do, offer curbside delivery for those online orders, and then have that order stream of coming in and going through the line like normal. And it's really worked out pretty well so far. You know, the efficiencies of having some customers in there picking up their own pizza, you know, ordering at the counter, doing those things, and then integrating the online orders in there where you can, has worked out pretty well.
Yeah, good, thank you. Tracy, you said that you began to think about reopening like you thought about opening in the first place by looking at absolutely every line item to find expenses that might be cut. So what are some of the ways that you've cut expenses during this challenging time?
Well, that's true. I did look at every single line item. So for example, little things can add up to just bottom line expenses at the end of the year. So for an example, I canceled our jeweler studio shop towel service. You know, in the beginning when I first opened, I took the shop towels home and laundered them myself. So we canceled the shop towel service. We canceled our shred pickup. We simply just take the shred material down to the facility and drop it off. That was 2/3 less expensive. So with each $500 savings at the end of the year, that's kind of snowballed into, you know, several $1,000s when we look at other expenses. Another thing that happened was we had many locals started ordering online from our Great One Divine Jewelry website. So they would order Great One Divine Jewelry items online. They were within 10 or 20 miles of Evansville, and some of them simply, you know, in the neighborhood just next door. They were just ordering online because our doors were shut. So we just picked up the phone and called them and thanked them, asked them how they were doing, gave us the opportunity to build a relationship or continue a relationship with a client, and offered a no contact delivery to their front doorstep, which all but one took us up on that. So what we did is we saved those overnight shipping charges. We'll continue to do that, as many people will, you know, order those items that maybe live in Henderson or Newburgh, or, you know, somewhere that is in a reasonable driving distance, especially with the gas being so low now. So just all of those expenses can make a huge impact. And in addition to that, one of the things that I did was I looked at the items on our year end that were the most expensive and thought, okay, how could I maybe renegotiate some of these expenses? I think as business owners, we get very much involved in our day-to-day operations, and expenses can creep in without us really thinking about them seriously. So a lot of companies out there were sitting on inventory as well. So, you know, I reached out to those and asked them, you're sitting on inventory. What if I buy some of that inventory? And it was at a huge saving. So, you know, cutting expenses can be cutting things out or pivoting to do it a little differently, but it could also be using some of those reserves strategically and purchasing things at a discounted rate or a savings. And it helped those companies out also because they had inventory they were unable to move, be it gift wrap or bows or jewelry boxes or even basic, what we call core inventory, like gold chain. Gold chain is never going to go bad. Wedding bands are never going to go bad. So using some reserves strategically, and not to stockpile, but to think about, okay, you know, I used to buy these at X dollar amount. Now, if I can buy them at half price, that is just a savings off the bottom line.
Great. All kinds of opportunities there. Trudy, as people are trying to preserve some profit or at least break even, what do they need to consider as they begin to reopen?
So, first of all, I just think it's important to think innovatively and remember your business doesn't have to look or feel like it did before the pandemic. What did you learn or change or modify that you want to keep? And perhaps a new product, a new service has or could be created due to the impact of COVID. So I think innovatively is important. I do think more in the lines of break even from a financial perspective than expiration date that Drew talked about, but I think it's a very similar or same concept, maybe different terminology. I think as you reopen as a small business, it's important to understand your break-even point, and I would drill that down to either maybe even by the week. I know some restaurants do it by the day. That you know what your fixed costs are, so you have to cover those. If you know what your typical profit margin is, you can work backwards and know my daily sales or my weekly sales needs to be Y in order to break even. Obviously, the goal isn't to break even. The goal is to be profitable, but it helps you kind of figure out what that minimum amount is to make sure that you're not reopened in such a way that you're losing money or losing more money every day, thinking it's a great thing that I've reopened, but the numbers are going backwards. So understand that. I think that kind of exercise can help you again understand how quickly you bring people back and what that staffing looks like. Kind of reiterate what Tracy said, watching kind of all those numbers, watching your customers' receivables. I think, some of your customers may be having challenges. So regular communication with them about collection of those so that you don't end up with some challenging cash flow situations of uncollectible receivables. With a lower top line, just regularly monitoring your financial results is so much more important to avoid any unpleasant cash flow issue or profitability surprise. So understanding those numbers, being able to project and plan for those for no surprises.
Great, thank you. Drew, what else should businesses consider in order to make sure they have the working capital they need in the coming months?
I think one thing that's really important is to continuously assess the viability of your business. And I speak from personal experience. One of the first businesses that I started, and it was my primary source of income, never failed, but it wasn't really successful. And it takes a lot of adjustment to your ego and your passion to admit that it's not viable to go forward or not a good idea to go forward. And many businesses will find that they're in that position. So number one, to be objective about that, and don't make that decision in a vacuum. Don't rely upon your own insights. You need to have trusted people that you can bounce that off of, which would include both paid counsel, attorneys and accountants and bankers, but also and mentors. So number one is to see that. Number two, I spent 10 years chairing a bank loan committee, and I saw a lot of people in that same position where they hung on to a business that wasn't viable any longer, or maybe never was viable, and they should have just cut and gone on to the next thing. And from the perspective of banking, bankers don't really come out well when they enforce their collateralization of a loan. So bankers don't want your business to close. They want your business to succeed. And the one thing that I saw through the 2008, 9, 10 era was business owners who were frank with their bankers generally found bankers that were their partners in trying to get them to succeed. So, have those conversations with your primary sources of capital. Banking is highly regulated. They can't lend money to people that don't have prospects of repaying it. So don't be angry at your banker if they can't accommodate you, but try to be forthright with them. And then I guess the last thing that I would say is there are private sources of capital. I mean, I work in the startup world, and those companies can't be funded by banks. So there's a vibrant angel investing economy in the state of Indiana. But I also always tell companies, don't ask for money when you need it. And what I mean by that is it's not a very compelling position to be in when you're trying to exchange some equity in your company for cash if you're really not in a very strong position. What excites investors is an exciting business model going forward. So if you're just trying to get back to what you used to be, you're not going to be attracted to private equity. But if you've seen an opportunity and you're ready to execute on it and you think you can go big, especially if you can scale it and repeat it, that could open you up to private sources of equity. So that'd be about the end of my conversation there.
Okay, great. Thank you, Drew. I'm going to ask each of you the same question. What one or two actions have you taken to be successful in spite of the pandemic, beyond what you've already offered? So what are a couple of things, a couple of steps that you've taken to continue to be successful? And Tracy, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. Well, Drew got me with the word ego. I think that a lot of businesses, again, as business owners, when the business becomes successful, things creep into our lives, such as we were closed on Mondays. We had the luxury of closing on Mondays 5 years ago and having some me time. So I think, staying really humble is really, really key. Take this opportunity to work in and on your business 6 days a week for a fast recovery. In the beginning, we didn't have any employees. So I was a one-woman operation with a couple of part-time high school people, and let the sales drive the staff. It's really important to take this time to make improvements. I made updates to the handbook. I created efficiencies. I purged the storage closets. I reviewed aged inventories, calculated, and became very strategic about staff entry. So, for a small business to continue on, we have to be willing to do the things that we were able to do in the beginning. We reopened and we're open on Mondays again. Yes, I'm going to hate not having that 2 days off, but I worked for over 30 years, 6 days a week. I know I can do it, and I want a fast recovery. So it's really important to realize this is a new spin on every business that is going to be successful. This is the opportunity to pivot and do it well and somewhat reinvent ourselves, but we all have the luxury also of people already knowing our business. We already have the brand recognition. So take all those positive things that we have and build from there. But you do have to be willing to implement new things like private appointments or changing your business hours, or maybe not bringing every single person back and just doing it yourself. It'll just cause a faster recovery and then grow back into what you were before. But I think Drew's right. We're not going to just open and be the business that we were, but this is the perfect opportunity to be a better business. And we have the time to do it. We have the luxury of having time to do it with maybe lower traffic flow and that kind of thing. But I'm very optimistic about the future.
Thank you. Brad, a couple of actions that you've taken in the pandemic.
Yeah, I've talked quite a bit about just kind of trying to stay yourself, true to yourself, and be innovative and continue to try new things. I think that's one of the things we've seen come out of this is that our teams have been really receptive to change during this time. We've had a lot of things we've thrown out at our teams in the stores, and they've been really open to it. And so something that may have been hard to implement before this time has been easier to implement during this, because our teams are much more understanding of the fact of what we're going through, what we're trying to accomplish here. And so things like online ordering that before would have been a real hurdle to try to get teams bought into that, on doing that on top of what they were already doing. They see the benefit of it now. They understand why we're doing it. And we've been able to kind of implement that a lot easier. And so look for those maybe opportunities of things that, could help drive your business forward for the future too. And try to implement those whenever your team's the most receptive to it.
Yeah. Nothing like a crisis to increase your sense of urgency. Trudy, a couple of actions that you've taken.
Yeah. So I would echo that. From our firm perspective, we reacted quickly to make technology enhancements that allowed us to move to a 95% plus remote workforce. and still be able to provide the same level of client service that we expect to deliver to our clients. So we saw clients add and change their product lines to provide new products and services that were needed in light of the pandemic, from workstation dividers to face masks to technology enhancements. And so I think bottom line, that quick adaptation is where I'm seeing companies be successful, quickly adapting.
Great. And Drew?
So most of my work is with what are referred to as innovation-based startup companies. And innovation-based startup companies seek to use innovation to disrupt the current way of doing things. All businesses have always been disrupted. It's just over a long period of time, typically. Now, this disruption is happening immediately. And so all of us are being disrupted in ways we don't even know. I don't like the word luck. I try not to use it. There's a proverb that says luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And there will be lots of opportunities in this marketplace, but they will favor the prepared. So one thing that I see in some of the companies I work with that are well capitalized is that they're looking to possibly acquire competitors or to acquire different business lines. And while you may not be capitalized to do that, there may be opportunities for synergies or mergers or combinations with other people in a similar or even a different marketplace for you. So I would sort of look at that sort of thing that would maybe be counterintuitive in a crisis. But the other thing that I would stress really, really hard is to try to review your product market fit on a regular basis. And to try to distill that in simple terms, it's how well your service or your product satisfies the need and desire of a customer. And those needs and desires are going to change dramatically because of this disruption. What you used to do may no longer be of interest or relevance to your customers. I was talking to a guy who's working remotely in a Manhattan office, and he's realized how much more efficient he is without having to commute, and how much more efficient his employees are without having to commute. And he's not going to renew his $800,000 a year lease. So, the product market fit no longer is there with a traditional office for this particular business. So look at your business and your service or product and try to discern if it is still meeting the customer's need or how you might be able to tweak it to better meet it. Yeah.
Good, thank you. I'm going to ask a couple of questions from the audience. The first question is for Brad and Tracy. What have you tried during this time that you'll continue post-pandemic? And I think you've touched on this a little bit, so it could be some additional things that you'll try. So Brad, what will you continue?
Yeah, we're definitely going to continue the online ordering. Like right now, it's a necessity, but I think going forward, it could help pull us out of the, kind of back into a higher level than maybe we were even before. So I think that's a great thing. But I think it's, with everything, it's looking at how we're treating our staff and how we're, making it a safe environment for them, looking at all those things and continuing to try to do that the best we can every day, and keeping them a focus in all of this is something that we're going to continue working to get better and better at. One of the areas we're looking at that is just the stress of our teams. It can be a stressful environment working in a retail type setting. And so looking at ways to reduce that stress, make work more enjoyable for them is an area that we're looking to try to improve on coming out of this.
Okay, great. Thank you. Tracy?
We'll continue to reach out to clients just at random, not necessarily sending them. I mean, of course, we'll continue to send them thank yous after they've made a purchase and that kind of thing, but just random clients that pop in our head, and we just want to give them a phone call, not an email, not a text, but a phone call just to say, hey, how are you doing? Again, one of the things that I did was I reached out to previous team members, team members that have moved on and graduated and have a career somewhere else, those who have retired or just went on to have a different career. So those are, people that understand the culture of Tracy Zeller Jewelry. They are usually ambassadors of, whatever your business is. So reaching out to previous employees, team members can be very, very valuable because they're talking to people throughout the day. They'll mention that you picked up the phone and called them, and just try to keep top mind awareness. Again, the grassroots marketing can really be more beneficial than anything else during these times. You don't have to explain to anybody what you're going through. They understand the situation. And so then the focus can be on how they're doing, how their kids are doing, their parents, and just continuing to build a relationship as your clients become your friends.
Great, thank you. And then the second question is targeted for Trudy and Drew. What should businesses be doing now to prepare for round 2 of the virus, or maybe expanding that to prepare for some future crisis? So Trudy, let me cue you up first.
So I think making sure you have the right team is really critical as you continue to navigate. I think as the landscape changes, as we learn more or learn less about the pandemic, and I think the ability to having a team that is able to and willing to adapt quickly, that can think innovatively and creatively, I think those are kind of important keys. I think it's going to be a very, very fluid, and we all like to make plans, 12-month, 3-year, 5-year plans, and I think that you've got to be understand that those plans are likely to change. I think you can have I think it was Brad earlier said expect the unexpected. And so have plans, but have plans that can ebb and flow as we see things continue to progress with the pandemic.
Great, thank you. And Drew, what suggestions would you have in terms of preparing for round 2 or the next crisis?
A couple of thoughts. One is that you eat an elephant one bite at a time, and these are very complex times. Don't get overwhelmed by the size of the task. Break it down into things that you can manage. I also would say that the most extreme adversities in my life, I've realized that I'm probably gonna be alive tomorrow unless some unforeseen circumstance happens, and I'm probably gonna be alive the next day. And if you can approach these as learning opportunities, it teaches you not only how to cope with these, but it also teaches you the limits that you can succeed at and continue at. So it's still very philosophical, but try not to look at these as the worst things in the life, but look at them as growth opportunities that will define for you how strong you really are. And then I guess the last thing is, and I think Kim's working to spin this up, but try to find peer groups or mentors that you can have objective conversations with, and the collective wisdom, the wisdom of the crowd is very, very strong, very important. And if you can process your observations in the context of others, other experiences and observations, it'll make you all stronger and better going forward.
And just to echo what Drew just said, the Center for Creative Leadership, which has the biggest leadership database in the world, their database strongly tells us that the best leadership growth comes in trying times. So when people are quizzed about where they grew the most as a leader, a huge number of them said it was by addressing challenges. So there may be a silver lining in addressing the challenges that we're faced with today. So many thanks to our panelists for sharing your wisdom today. This is available, of course, to the people that logged on, but has also been recorded so others can watch it as well. And there will be some next step opportunities for folks. So Kim, I'm going to turn that over to you to let people know how to continue the discussion if they're interested.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Tracy, Drew, Brad, and Trudy. This has just been so helpful. I've compiled a whole list. You may not be able to see it, but I've been taking notes this entire time. great comments and suggestions. So we'd like to know your feedback. Everybody that's on the call, and our colleague at the Chamber, Rachel Herr, has agreed to help us in bringing people together, as Drew mentioned, for groups where we can talk about common issues, problem-solving groups that may eventually form into peer groups, as well as people that are interested in having these kinds of panel discussions going forward. So please contact Rachel. Her information is on the screen, rher@swinchamber.com. Let her know if you'd be interested in participating in a group conversation, or if you want to make sure that you're on our list to be notified when we have other panel presentations like this one. So on behalf of the Southwest Indiana Small Business Development Center and our team and the Southwest Indiana Chamber, I want to thank everybody for taking their time to participate today, and we wish you a great day. So thank you all.